Hello and welcome to the big picture. The RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat has once again stirred a controversy which has seen heated debates in the past also. His assertion in Mumbai yesterday that Hindutva is the identity of the nation and that all those living in India are Hindus has assumed a new significance following the BJP-led government assuming power at the centre. Mohan Bhagwat's assertions have predictably evoked strong responses from various political parties, with some even demanding a clarification from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. However, beyond the political reactions, the issue requires a closer scrutiny. Hindutva, a concept developed by V.D. Savarkar, the original RSS ideologue in the 1920s, has been interpreted in many ways. Savarkar's concept, however, was seen as exclusionary, while the defenders of Bhagwat says that his statement is inclusive. Interestingly, Bhagwat has also come out with a statement seeking unification of Hindus and in effect wanting to end casteism and untouchability and discrimination among Hindus. Is this new approach of the RSS under Bhagwat aimed for political gains, or is it a sincere attempt? Meanwhile, can his assertion that Hindutva is the Indian identity stand scrutiny? We will discuss all this today with Professor Ashish Nandy, political psychologist and social theorist, Professor Pushpesh Pant, political analyst, Professor Aditya Mukherjee, historian at the Center for Historical Studies, JNU, and Baldev Sharma, former editor of the RSS publication Panchajanya and a RSS activist. Welcome to all of you. Professor Ashish Nandy, is this a new formulation of Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, or is this something which has always been said and is what Savarkar had said as far back as in the 1920s?
No, Savarkar didn't say this at all. Savarkar was very clear that he was looking for a proper nationality for Indians, and he felt that only Hindus, however deformed and fallen they might be, could provide that nationality. Therefore, he excluded Muslims from it very clearly, Muslims and Christians, and proudly said that when Mr. Jinnah floated his two-nation theory, that he had always agreed with Mr. Jinnah on this score. Mohan Bhagwat is saying something different, something which was already there in the air of India, because even the word Hindu is not Indian, and actually etymologically India, Hindu and Hindustan, they are all have the same roots, they come from the same word, namely Sindhu, and therefore I do believe that it's an older concept. But some things which are true historically need not be said at a particular point of time when that statement is likely to arouse hostilities and divisiveness. And I do not think Mr. Bhagwat's goals were perfectly innocent. And I would suggest that instead of harping on the fact that we are all Hindus here, I think a simpler formulation would have been, we are all Indians here, because they come from the same root, there is nothing wrong about it, or we are Bharatiya.
Okay, that's interesting. So, Professor Pant, two things. One, he says that, it is not exactly what Savarkar says, and second thing is that Mohan Bhagwat may not be really innocent when he's making this kind of formulations.
I think both are very correct statements. I think one couldn't agree with Professor Nandy more. I think one, he has put it in the correct historical perspective, that if you go back millennia, the word Hindu, Hindi, Hindustan go much before Savarkar. Then I think India today is not India of 1920s, is not of Mr. Jinnah and the Pact, 1916 Pact and so on and so forth. We have come so much ahead. There has been a partition, there have been communal riots, there have been wars fought between India and Pakistan, and I think these are emotive issues. So Professor Nandy made another very interesting point, and I think important point. Certain things may be true historically, but they needn't be rubbed in to remove the scab from the old wounds and make them a cancerous wound subsequently. So I think that's one point which we must remember.
What is this you're talking about?
No,
some of the things may be true historically, what is it?
Like, for instance, you may say that the idea of India was defined by the term Hindustan, where Hindus stayed. But that was much, much before Savarkar, much, much before the Mopilas had landed on the Kerala coast, much, much before Mahmud Ghazni had a twinkle in his eye about the Somnath temple. So people identified India geographically with river Indus, which was Sindhu, which had a pronunciation called Hindu and Hindustan. That's different. Hindustan, Sindhu, beyond Indus. But that's neither here nor there. Whether you are defining a territory which was India, which is totally altered after partition, or whether you are talking historically, the sense of identity which the Hindus, the majority community had, or whether the caste system can be obliterated in a wink because somebody thinks it's convenient politically at the moment, is one part. And I think unfortunately Mr. Mohan Bhagwat is doing a great disservice to my mind to his own cause. He is dividing the nation rather than unifying it. And I'm not talking only of Hindus and Muslims. I'm talking of Hindus who belong to different castes, different communities. There is a Tamil identity, there is a Bengali identity, and the national anthem sort of underlines that. Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha, Dravida, Utkal, Banga, and so on. So people have a strong sense of identity rooted to their racial, sub-racial memories in different geographical territories, and you sort of try to steamroller them into an inclusive definition of your own is not going to be easily digested.
Mr. Baldev Sharma, how would you react to this? Do you think that the aim of Mr. Mohan Bhagwat is to unify India when he says that Hindutva is an Indian identity, Indian's identity is that of Hindutva? Is it aimed at unifying the nation, or is it dividing the nation as Professor Pant feels?
देखिए, हिंदू शब्द का जो प्रयोग भागवत जी ने किया है, उसके पीछे कहीं से भी इस देश के विभाजन का भाव नहीं है। ये बड़ा दुर्भाग्य है कि जब हिंदू शब्द का प्रयोग कर दिया जाता है तो जो तथाकथित सेकुलर मानने वाले अपने को लोग हैं, उनको देश का विभाजन नजर आता है। और जब इस देश का प्रधानमंत्री एक समय में मिजोरम विधानसभा के चुनाव में खुलेआम वे भाषण देता है कि अगर हमारी पार्टी जीतेगी, कांग्रेस जीतेगी, तो बाइबल के अनुसार राज्य चलेगा यहाँ का, तो उनको देश का विभाजन नजर नहीं आता। हिंदू शब्द का प्रयोग ठीक है, हमारे विद्वान साथियों ने उसकी ऐतिहासिकता का वर्णन किया है, पर हम वास्तव में इस देश के बारे में जब विचार करते हैं तो गंगा, राम, गायत्री ये सब इस देश की पहचान है और वो हिंदुत्व से जुड़ी हुई हैं। और हिंदू की बात कहने का अर्थ ये बिल्कुल नहीं है कि इस देश में मजहब के आधार पर दूसरे लोगों को रहने के लिए कोई जगह नहीं है, मुसलमानों को, क्रिश्चियंस को। इस देश में तो सारे विधर्मी लोगों को पूरे प्रेम के साथ आत्मसात किया गया है, उनको फलने फूलने का अवसर दिया गया है। यहां तक कि यहूदी जो इजराइल से उजड़कर पूरी दुनिया में रहे और भारत में भी आए, उन्होंने बाद में इजराइल गठित होने के बाद जो बयान दिए हैं, तो उनका कहना है कि भारत ही एक मात्र देश ऐसा था जहां हमें सुकून और सद्भाव के साथ अपनाया गया। तो हिंदू सांप्रदायिक शब्द नहीं है, ये इस देश की एक पहचान को परिभाषित करता है। और भागवत जी का केवल उतना सा आशय है, उसमें से राजनीति तलाशना या ये तलाशना कि वोटों का ध्रुवीकरण किया जा रहा है, या ये संकेत ढूंढना कि ये मुसलमानों के खिलाफ है या ईसाइयों के खिलाफ है, ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है। भागवत जी जिस विचारधारा को लेकर काम कर रहे हैं वो राष्ट्र के उन्नयन की विचारधारा है, वो सामाजिक समरसता की विचारधारा है, वो सेवा की विचारधारा है। तो उसमें विभाजन का और दूसरों से विद्वेष मन में रखने का कोई भाव मुझे नजर नहीं आता है।
Okay, Professor Aditya Mukherjee, it's interesting what Bhagwat has said. He says, as Mr. Sharma also was pointing out, he says that all those who live in Hindustan are Hindus, whatever their style of worshipping may be, whatever their language may be, still all of them are all Hindus, whichever religion they belong to. So what is the problem there? That is what he's asking.
See, the problem is the following, and I'm a little surprised.
And they claim that this is inclusive ideology. What he's saying is inclusive ideology.
You see, there are several problems from the debate as it has occurred so far, including the one that this is true historically and need not be rubbed in. The first problem is that what is Hindutva as it was defined? As Savarkar defined Hindutva, he said that anybody
the
who's...
term Hindutva emerged from
Savarkar, where he's the theoretician of,
Absolutely.
after all, the greatest mind that this wing has produced. And he said that Hindutva means that those whose Pitri Bhumi and Punya Bhumi are in this country are the people of this country. They are the real people. which automatically excluded, as Professor Nandi said, the Muslims and the Christians, because their Punya Bhumi is not here. So it is exclusionary, there is no doubt about it. But the more important thing, when you talk of Hindutva being the national identity, the makers of modern India, the makers of Indian nationalism, did not think so. In fact, those who argued Hindutva is the national identity, therefore had to symbolically and in fact actually murder the Mahatma, the maker of modern India, because it represented entirely the opposite view. The Indian nation was imagined in the second half of the 19th century, the modern Indian nation that we are talking about, not just a geographical region under various kinds of empires, but the nation that it has emerged imagined itself not as a Hindutva nation, but as a nation which celebrated diversity of every kind. As was said by Pushpesh also, of every kind, regional, language, religion, etc., etc. Now, in that situation, to say that Hindutva is our identity, national identity, is completely questions the whole idea of India with which this modern nation was created and was nurtured for so many years.
Okay, Professor Ashish Nandi. The question is of cultural identity. There are 2-3 things which always confuses people what the RSS is. The RSS says that Hindutva is a cultural and a geographical idea. It is much beyond politics and things like that. Now we have the RSS chief saying that it is the entire Indian identity is what Hindutva is. And why has it assumed importance is because we have to remind ourselves and everybody, our viewers also, that last month, in April 2014, a month before the elections, in an interview to the Indian Express, the present Prime Minister, then the hopeful Prime Minister, had made this statement that he believes in Hindutva, and it's very important. He said that I am a Hindutva face. So in this context, this debate becomes very important. Don't you think so?
The debate becomes important, but the more you debate, the more it divides people. When I said it was historically true, I have a much larger span in mind. First of all, the word Hindu came from abroad. Hindus never called themselves Hindus. They called themselves part of the Dharmic civilization. They didn't even call it that. They had no name for it. For that matter, all Asian and African religions have no real word for religion. The word religion is a Western word. The problem Mr. Bhagwat doesn't recognize is this, and even to some extent Aditya doesn't recognize, is that Hinduism has become a proper religion in the last 150 years. We talk of it as a very old religion, but that very old religion has an entirely different thrust. They did not distinguish between religious boundaries. They had sampradayas and a kind of dharmic, a kind of fluid confederation of faith with very fluid boundaries. But the Buddhists never call them, Buddhists call themselves Buddhists, but that was in the name of a sampradaya. Hindus began to become a proper religion in the Western sense of the term towards the beginning of 19th century, when for the first time the reform movements began to function in India. And much of the Hindutva literature which has come out of RSS and other and Hindu nationalist functionaries have come out of people who were influenced by these reform movements. Excuse me. It is they who have defined Hindutva and the word Hindu as the definition of a religious community, the way Christianity defines a religious community, or Islam defines a religious community, like the Semitic creeds. Otherwise, this was never the practice in places like Japan, China, and India. I mean, Japan, for example, more than 90% of the people are Shintos, more than 80% are Buddhists. That itself shows how fluid the religious boundaries are. One can be both at the same time. And there are in India too many surviving communities which are simultaneously Hindu and some other can be classified under some other religious head too, and they are not a small number, as the Anthropological Survey of India once showed in 1992-93 survey, that there were nearly 15% of the communities they surveyed could be classified under more than one religion. That was the style of India. That was the style of India. Defining Hindus as a proper community at this point of time has already been divisive. The Sikhs no longer want to call themselves the fighting out for Hinduism or a part of Hinduism. The Jains are increasingly calling themselves a separate religion, and even Ramakrishna Mission went to court saying that they were not Hindus. So I would advise Mr. Mohan Bhagwat that whatever might be his personal beliefs, please do not try to redefine Indians at this late stage. Now, work with the categories which obtain in the country and be happy with it.
Professor Nandi, I just
Celebrate
want to,
the diversity.
No, Professor
Celebrate
Nandi,
the diversity. Do not look.
Professor Nandi, my question is this.
Yes, please.
You know, you are saying that what he has propagated or what he is trying to define may divide. But in fact, it is very interesting that in his speech in Bombay yesterday, Mr. Bhagwat says, for the next 5 years, I am quoting him, for the next 5 years, we have to work with the aim of bringing equality among all the Hindus in the country. All Hindus should be drinking water at one place, should be praying at one place, and after their death, their body should be burnt at the same place. Unquote. So, you know, here is the RSS chief whom you are saying that is trying to divide, but on the other hand, he is actually trying to bring all the Hindus together, remove all the discrimination, you know, in the next 5 years.
But that was one of their slogans always, unite the Hindus. Unite the Hindus, organize the Hindus.
Is this a political slogan? Was it a political? Is it a political slogan?
New, because I did say they are direct. Pardon me?
Is it a political slogan?
The political slogan was unite the Hindus, or organize them and martialize them. That was the slogan of Hindutva. That is the difference between Savarkar's Hindutva and the Hindutva-like features which have the ideology of people like Brahmabandha Upadhyay and Vivekananda and Sister Nivedita had. They were also talking of a unified faith called Hinduism, modeled on one of the conventional religious religions of the world.
What they're trying to do is to
they
create.
Didn't have this kind of a.
Okay, sir. Yes.
What they're trying to do is to create a new history rather than, reflect something which was historically true. What, as Ashish Nandi says, I have no disagreement with that. What was historically true was not Hindutva. What was historically true was an enormous number of sects with no name.
No names.
There was a civilization which tolerated, in fact, grew with enormous amount of difference. And that is the beauty of the Indian civilization, that it could survive with enormous number of divisions, of sects and beliefs and practices and stuff like that. What is new is they're trying to homogenize Hinduism or these sects into one view of what is Hinduism. It is not enough to be a Hindu. You have to be a Hindu like them. If you are a Hindu like Mahatma Gandhi, he should be murdered. There is a big difference. That is what is the question.
I think I agree. The problem is that Mohan Bhagwat's statement is riddled with contradictions. If he says all Hindus should drink water at one place, after death be cremated at one place, what happens to Hindus? What happens to Muslims, which according to his definitions are Hindus, who don't have to be cremated after death but have to be buried? What happens to Christians who have to be buried but not cremated? So you are saying that at one level you are saying that anybody who stays in this country is a Hindu, and he should then conform to the cremation rites which are against his sense of faith, belief, etc. This is one. The second point which I would like to make is, it is not a question of how he defines who a Hindu is. It is how a person identifies himself, what his identity is. Is my identity of an Indian Muslim, Indian Christian, Indian Dalit, Indian Hindu, Indian Brahman, Indian Thakur, Indian Sikh, Indian Vaishya, or an Indian tribal? Now these multiple identities, none of them is contradictory to an Indian identity. But there is this amalgam. The person identifies himself not as an Arab Muslim, not as an African Muslim, not as an Indonesian Muslim, but as an Indian Muslim.
Right.
So I think that is, or Indian Christian, or Indian Sikh, so that's what I think.
So what,
is important.
Baldev Sharma ji, what is it that then, as all my other panelists are saying, what is it that you are trying to do? Are you trying to bring all the Indians together under the guise of Hindus, and then then as Professor Pant points out, then there are too many contradictions there. The paragraph which I read, the speech which Mr. Bhagwat gave in Mumbai yesterday, trying to bring all Hindus together. No, who are these Hindus you are talking about? In one breath you say that all of them are Hindus, and would that apply to these Hindus also?
पुष्पेश जी ने कहा था जनगण मन अपने राष्ट्रगान का हवाला देते हुए, तो इस देश में मराठा राष्ट्रवाद, बंगाली राष्ट्रवाद ये सब नहीं हो सकता। देश का राष्ट्रवाद तो एक ही होगा। और जिस तरह प्रोफेसर मुखर्जी ने सावरकर का उल्लेख करते हुए हिंदुत्व की परिभाषा दी कि इस देश के प्रति जो मातृभक्ति का भाव रखे, जो पुण्य भूमि का भाव रखे, वो इस देश का राष्ट्रीय है, वो हिंदू है। तो हिंदू शब्द से हमें आपत्ति हो सकती है, पर उसके पीछे जो भावना है वो इस देश के प्रति समर्पण का भाव है। और इस देश में इंडियन ब्राह्मण, इंडियन मुस्लिम, इंडियन क्रिश्चियन, इंडियन जाट, इंडियन ठाकुर, अगर इस तरह की विचारधारा चलेगी तो देश तो कभी एक रहेगा ही नहीं। और इसी का परिणाम है कि आज पूर्वोत्तर से लेकर और उड़ीसा तक कितने ही राष्ट्र बनाए जाने का अभियान चल रहा है इस देश में, अलगाववाद के नाते विभिन्न राष्ट्रीयताओं को आधार बनाकर। तो इस देश को एक रखना है तो राष्ट्रीयता का कोई एक भाव हमें बनाना पड़ेगा। और जैसे हिंदुत्व को मुसलमानों का, क्रिश्चियनों का विरोधी माना जा रहा है, तो मैं एक उदाहरण देना चाहूंगा कि इस देश के जो शिक्षा मंत्री रहे और मुख्य न्यायाधीश रहे छागला साहब, उन्होंने स्वयं को अपने को हिंदू रेस का बताते हुए गर्व महसूस किया। और हिंदू रेस का कहने के कारण वो कोई इस्लाम से बाहर नहीं हो गए। हिंदुत्व इस देश की एक राष्ट्रीयता का बोधक शब्द है।
नहीं,
और
ओके।
तो न किसी मजहब के विरोध में है, न किसी मजहब को खत्म करना चाहता है, न किसी मजहब को हजम करना चाहता है।
शर्मा जी,
इस देश की एकता बनाए रखने के लिए कोई एक छतरी चाहिए। अगर देश विभाजित होता चला गया तो फिर देश एक कैसे रहेगा?
नहीं, शर्मा जी,
हिंदुत्व के अंदर है।
one second sir. Sharma ji, the question is this, that all these
जी,
theories which are being floated, Hindutva and the formulations of it are all essentially aimed for political benefit. That is also one of the major charges against the RSS, against whoever is supporting RSS. So even this is being seen, the latest statement of Mohan Bhagwat is also being seen as a political gambit in the, with elections in view. How do you react to those charges?
नहीं, भागवत जी के कहने में कहीं से भी राजनीतिक लाभ लेने की कोशिश नहीं है, बल्कि भागवत जी के बयान को आधार बनाकर राजनीतिक लाभ लेने का प्रयास किया जा रहा है। लोग उन्हें हिटलर तक कह रहे हैं। भागवत जी का जो कहना है वो संघ 85 वर्षों से जो काम करता आ रहा है वही आज कह रहे हैं। भागवत जी उसी संघ के प्रतिनिधि हैं जिसे डॉक्टर हेडगेवार ने शुरू किया, और संघ कहता है कि हिंदुओं का संगठन करना है। और आप भी अभी थोड़ी देर पहले कह रहे थे कि अगर हिंदुओं को विभिन्न जातियों में विभाजित किया तो हिंदू तो बट जाएगा। तो भागवत जी तो हिंदू समाज को संगठित करने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं, और हिंदू समाज को संगठित करने का अर्थ दूसरों का विरोध करना बिल्कुल भी नहीं है।
नहीं, ये ओके। शर्मा जी, हिंदुओं को you are saying you are trying to unite the Hindus, and in the same breath you say that everybody is a Hindu, whether he is a Muslim, a Christian, a Sikh, whoever, all of them are Hindus. That is where the confusion also lies, Professor Pant.
No, I don't understand. शर्मा जी भी बहुत ये बात कह रहे हैं कि हिंदू शब्द से हमें कोई नहीं, भावना का आदर होना चाहिए। तो अल्लामा इकबाल जो कहते हैं कि हिंदी है हम, वतन है हिंदुस्तान हमारा, तो वो ये भी कह रहे हैं कि हमारी पितृभूमि है, वतन है हमारा, हिंदी है हम, हिंदू नहीं कह रहे हैं, हिंदी है हम। तो अगर आप हिंदुस्तानी कहें तो झगड़ा ही ना हो। अगर आप बार बार घुमा फिरा कर उस मूल शब्द की ओर न जाएं जिसके साथ एक ऐतिहासिक पृष्ठभूमि है, जिसके साथ एक पूर्वाग्रह है, जिसके साथ कुछ दुखद यादें जुड़ी हैं, उनको अगर आप छोड़ दें तो किसी को आपत्ति नहीं होगी। यदि आप हिंदुओं को, जो डॉक्टर नंदी ने भी बात कही कि समाज सुधार के कार्यक्रमों के साथ 19वीं सदी में ये मांसपेशियों वाला हिंदुत्व प्रकट हुआ, हिंदुइज्म विद मस्कुलर एग्रेशन। नाउ इफ the intent is to unite the Hindus and eradicate the evil practices of society, then you might as well not stick to one word and talk of either Hindustani or Bharatiyata or Hindi and try for social reform rather than say that this is to be done immediately.
So, Professor Nandi, this is not social reform. What is being attempted is not social reform.
And what will you do with the Hindus outside India? I mean, if only those who are staying in India are all Hindus, there are also millions of Hindus outside India. And then you cannot raise questions like why there are why books or essays with the title 300 Ramayanas are being taught in universities. They must be scrapped when there are millions of Indians in India who worship Ravana. So their Ramayana is obviously different from the Ravana of mainstream Hinduism. So these are problems, and I
Yes.
think the more we talk about them, more we debate them, the more we make the situation worse. Because nobody, I mean, there is also something called agency. If Gandhi had said the same word, it would have another meaning. If Subhash Chandra Bose had said it, it would have another meaning. But when RSS says it, it has a different meaning. Bhagwat should understand that. I mean, if he doesn't have that much of political sensitivity and even common sense, that certain things should not be said at certain points of time, that there is something called Yoga Dharma, I think he is not fit to be in public life.
Yes, Professor Mukherjee.
This understanding of Hinduism, as they are saying, that it is all inclusive, everybody is included in it, Muslims, Christians. Firstly, if that was true, then why this massive drive to do Shuddhikaran? Why do you have to उनको reconvert करने की क्या जरूरत है? पहली बात तो ये है. The second thing is that even within Hinduism, as Professor Nandi very correctly says, it is the beauty of, even after you are calling it Hinduism, is that it's enormous disparity, you know, it's enormous richness. And this 300 Ramayans is a very good example. But you do not allow it. You won't allow a Wendy Doniger. You know, you won't allow an alternate view of Hinduism. By doing that, they are killing what is probably one of the greatest points or greatest elements of this religious tradition, which is now being called Hinduism, is are we going to take it back to in what was its strongest points, or are we going to now narrow it down so much that it becomes an absurd kind of fundamentalism? Are we going to, in other words, are we matching up to Taliban? Are we doing the flip side of that? Or are we going back to what is indeed a great tradition, where there is the possibility of diverse forces, diverse views coexisting together?
Sharma ji, last words, very quickly. Is this some kind of a, you know, these assertions which are being made about Hinduism, Hindutva, is this something which is being done to counter some other form of, say, as Professor Mukherjee says, you know, the Taliban, the Talibanization? Is it what? Why is it being?
हिंदुत्व का आक्रामकता से कोई लेना देना नहीं है. और जैसे अभी प्रोफेसर मुखर्जी ने कहा कि विविधता, और नंदी साहब ने भी कहा कि 300 रामायण हैं, तो भारत में तो विविधताओं का समायोजन ही हिंदुत्व है. और चारवाक जैसे व्यक्ति को, जो कभी भी हिंदू दर्शन को मानते नहीं थे, उसके विरोध में बोलते थे, हमने उनको भी ऋषि माना है. तो इतनी विविधता और इतनी समन्वयता अगर विचार में है, तो इसमें आक्रामकता तो हो ही नहीं सकती. ये तो सबको संभाल कर समायोजित करके रखने की बात है. ये केवल शब्द से चिढ़ है, और उस चिढ़ के कारण इसका विरोध किया जाता है. अन्यथा और विरोध के लायक इसमें कुछ है ही नहीं.
Okay, sir.
But
Professor Pant, yes. Professor Nandi, very quickly.
I wanted to ask Mr. Sharma this. I propose this to him actually, that this is actually something which common sense dictates. That if you say these things, it becomes worse. Because as long as you do not say, even many Pakistanis will admit or call themselves Hindu Muslims, as one actually did on an interview with an Indian television channel. But once you say it, it puts the back up of people. That's the other part of the story.
Okay. Professor Pant, very quick last words. Are these provocatory?
Particularly if RSS says that.
Are these deliberately
RSS को मूल तो फलना नहीं चाहिए इसको.
Or do you think that, you know, this is something which this country needs to discuss with a cool head?
Girish, I think if one might quote the old saying, it may not be deliberately provocative, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So in this case, unfortunately, Sharma ji कह रहे हैं कि लोगों को शब्द से चिढ़ है इसलिए वो कर रहे हैं. But in real life, the word and the meaning are inseparable. Shabdar, even the first verse of Raghuvansh is Vagartha Saprikto Vagartha Pratipattaye. You can't separate the meaning from the word. And the innuendos, undertones, undercurrents, the context. So the text and context in this case render it explosive and volatile.
Okay, I think on that note we need to end, and on that note of warning actually that it could become explosive unnecessarily. Hopefully this will die down, and then as Professor Nandi says, some of the things need not be spoken out. Thanks to all my guests, Professor Ashish Nandi, Baldev Sharma, Professor Pushpesh Pant and Professor Aditi Mukherjee. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on Big Picture same time tomorrow.